Seeing a girl being dragged by her hair, the cowboy rode in and took her with him Wild West love. The streets were mostly empty, except for the occasional horse-drawn wagon rattling over the uneven wooden planks of the main road. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows from the wooden buildings and the saloon's swinging doors. A soft breeze moved through the town, carrying with it the smells of fresh bread from the bakery, the earthy scent of the stables, and the faint aroma of gunpowder from the blacksmith's shop. Life in Red Creek was simple. People knew each other by name, and every small act of kindness mattered. Children ran barefoot on the streets, laughing and playing as if the wide plains belonged only to them. Shopkeepers arranged goods outside their stores, and cowboys repaired their saddles or polished their boots before riding off to tend their herds. It was a town where everyone had a role, and everyone watched out for one another. Among the town's residents, Clara stood out not because she sought attention but because of her gentle and caring nature. She lived with her parents in a small shop on the main street, a modest store filled with fabrics, trinkets, and everyday essentials. Clara's days were busy, but she carried out her work with patience and a smile. She loved helping her parents and often went out of her way to make life easier for others. Her kindness had earned her a quiet respect from the townsfolk, and people often stopped to exchange a word or ask for advice when they saw her passing by. Clara herself enjoyed the simplicity of her life. She liked the morning sunlight spilling across the streets, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery, and the friendly chatter of neighbors. But even in this calm town, she sometimes felt a restlessness, a quiet yearning for something beyond the familiar streets and dusty paths. One morning, as Clara walked toward the bakery to fetch fresh bread for her family, the wind carried with it a sense of something unusual. The streets felt quieter than usual, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Clara noticed a few unfamiliar faces lingering near the saloon, strangers whose eyes darted nervously as they spoke in low tones. She paused for a moment, her instincts telling her to be cautious. Yet she shook off the feeling, attributing it to her imagination. After all, Red Creek had rarely seen trouble, and the townspeople preferred peace over conflict. At the edge of the street near the stables, a lone figure appeared, a man on horseback. He was not one of the townsfolk, and his presence immediately drew attention. His clothes were rugged but clean, and his boots bore the dust of long travels. The man's eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the town as if he were searching for something. He seemed calm yet ready for action, the kind of person who had seen much and carried stories behind his silent gaze. This was Jack, a cowboy known in whispers for his courage and fairness, a wanderer who had roamed the vast plains and small settlements of the West. He had come to Red Creek without fanfare, simply riding into town like any traveler, but something about his presence suggested that his arrival was not random. Jack tied his horse near the stables and walked toward the saloon. People watched quietly, curious about the newcomer but wary of drawing attention. He greeted the bartender with a polite nod and asked for a simple breakfast. As he ate, he observed the town carefully, noticing the routine of life, the movement of the townsfolk, and the subtle tensions that might have gone unnoticed by others. There was a sense that Jack was both part of the world and separate from it, an observer who could act decisively if the need arose. His quiet presence was reassuring to some and slightly intimidating to others, but there was no denying the air of calm competence that surrounded him. Meanwhile, Clara finished her errands and began her walk home. The sun was climbing higher in the sky, making the wooden planks of the street warm under her feet. She carried a small basket with bread and other essentials for her family, moving gracefully yet with a careful attention to her surroundings. She noticed the town's stillness and felt a flicker of unease. Though Red Creek was peaceful, Clara had learned to trust her instincts, a skill that had helped her avoid trouble in small ways before. Yet she continued on her path, believing that today would pass as any other ordinary day. But the ordinary peace of Red Creek was about to be broken. Unbeknownst to Clara, a gang of outlaws had been watching the town from the nearby hills. They had chosen Red Creek not out of necessity but out of opportunity. Their eyes were on easy targets, those who wandered the streets alone or carried valuable goods. They moved with the stealth of predators, planning to create fear and chaos with sudden violence. Clara's path home had unfortunately crossed the line between the town's ordinary life and the danger that had been quietly approaching. As Clara neared a narrow alleyway between two wooden buildings, the gang made their move. A hand grabbed her shoulder from behind, and before she could cry out, another pulled her by the hair, yanking her toward the shadows. The street was empty enough that no one immediately noticed the struggle, and the sounds of her surprised gasp echoed softly against the wooden walls. Clara's heart raced with fear. Her mind searched for a way to escape, to call for help, but the alley was narrow and the attackers were strong. They pulled her toward a waiting horse, ready to take her far from the safety of the town. She struggled, but their grip was firm, and the ground beneath her feet scraped painfully as she was dragged along. From the corner of the street, Jack saw the sudden movement and heard the faint but urgent sound of distress. His instincts kicked in instantly. Without hesitation, he mounted his horse and spurred it forward, galloping toward the alley where Clara was being attacked. Dust rose behind him as he rode at full speed, the wind whipping against his face, carrying the sound of Clara's cries. His heart was steady, but his mind was sharply focused on the danger ahead. Jack had faced threats before, but the sight of someone in immediate peril demanded action that was swift and decisive. As Jack approached, the outlaws turned to face him, surprised by his sudden appearance. He did not hesitate. He raised his voice firmly, warning them to stop, and when they ignored his command, he drew his revolver with precise calm. The sound of the gunshot rang through the alley, and the attackers, startled by the skill and confidence of the cowboy, hesitated. In that brief moment, Jack closed the distance, using both his strength and the element of surprise. He fought with determination, not out of anger but out of a clear sense of justice. Clara, seeing an opportunity, pulled herself free from one attacker's grip, leaning into Jack as he pushed her out of immediate danger. Within moments, the attackers were forced to retreat. Jack's presence, courage, and quick thinking had turned the tide, giving Clara a chance to escape. She clung to him, shaken but unharmed, and together they moved to a safer part of the street. The townsfolk, who had begun to notice the commotion, emerged from their homes and shops, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and relief. They whispered to one another, surprised at the sudden violence but grateful for the bravery that had saved one of their own. In the quiet that followed, Clara's hands trembled slightly as she held onto her basket, and then instinctively she reached for Jack's arm. He offered her a reassuring smile, one that did not need words but carried calm and strength. Clara's fear began to subside, replaced by a profound sense of gratitude. She realized that in the vast, unpredictable world of the Wild West, courage and kindness could appear in the form of a stranger, someone who would risk everything to protect a life in danger. Jack, in turn, studied Clara with careful eyes. He could see the resilience in her, the calmness beneath her fear, and the quiet strength that she had shown even in that brief moment of terror. He recognized that she was not just someone to be protected, but someone whose presence mattered, whose courage in the face of danger had earned his respect. There was a silent understanding between them, a bond formed in the heat of a fleeting but intense moment. The town of Red Creek returned to its peaceful rhythm, but the encounter left its mark on both Clara and Jack. She returned home, still shaking slightly, but her heart carried the memory of courage and unexpected heroism. Jack remained nearby, knowing that the town and its people were safe, at least for now, but aware that his journey through Red Creek had only just begun. The events of that morning had shifted the ordinary life of the town, introducing tension, bravery, and the possibility of connection that neither Clara nor Jack could ignore. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its warm glow over the streets and buildings, Red Creek resumed its usual pace. Children returned to their games, shopkeepers attended to their goods, and horses neighed softly in the stables. Yet beneath this calm, both Clara and Jack carried the memory of that dramatic morning, a reminder that even in the quietest towns, life could change in an instant. The dust of the streets, the warmth of the sun, and the gentle breeze all held a new significance. Clara had glimpsed the courage that existed beyond her familiar world, and Jack had found a connection that could transform the path he had been wandering alone. In the hearts of both, the story of that morning would linger. Red Creek, with its wooden buildings and dusty streets, had witnessed an extraordinary moment, one that blended danger, courage, and the beginnings of something deeper. Clara's life would continue, shaped subtly by the memory of the cowboy who had ridden in and taken her from danger, while Jack's journey would intertwine with hers, leading them both into experiences that neither could yet imagine. After the terrifying morning in the alley, Clara could not shake the memory of how quickly her life had been endangered. She had returned home with trembling hands and a racing heart, yet part of her felt a strange relief. The town of Red Creek, though peaceful, had revealed a side of danger she had only heard about in stories. Her parents embraced her tightly, their worry evident, and she reassured them, though the fear still lingered. They urged her to stay indoors, to avoid wandering alone until the town could regain its sense of safety. Clara nodded obediently, but she knew she could not hide forever. Life had to go on, and she had responsibilities in her family's shop. Jack, meanwhile, did not linger long in the town after the confrontation. He had tied his horse behind the saloon briefly to observe the town, ensuring that the attackers had indeed left and that no other threats loomed nearby. He had noticed how the townsfolk watched him with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Though he did not speak much, his actions had already left an impression. Yet Jack was aware that the danger had not fully vanished. The gang that had attacked Clara had been bold, and boldness often led to recklessness. They would likely return, and he knew he needed to remain vigilant, not just for Clara, but for the town itself. Clara spent the rest of the morning inside her family's shop, arranging fabrics and small trinkets, yet her mind wandered back to the cowboy who had saved her. She remembered the way he had charged into the alley without hesitation, the calm confidence in his eyes, and the swift actions that had ensured her safety. A sense of curiosity began to grow inside her, mixed with admiration. Who was this man? Where had he come from? And why had he risked so much for someone he had never met? By midday, Clara's curiosity had grown strong enough that she found herself walking to the edge of town, near the stables where she had first seen him. Jack was there, tending to his horse, adjusting the saddle and quietly observing the surroundings. When he noticed her approach, he nodded in acknowledgement. Clara hesitated for a moment, feeling both nervous and compelled to speak with him. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice steady despite the lingering fear in her heart. "I don't know what would have happened without you." Jack's expression softened. "You were brave," he said quietly. "Most people would have frozen in that situation. You didn't panic and you kept moving. That helped me help you." Clara felt a warmth in her chest at his words. They were simple, yet sincere. She realized that his courage was matched by a quiet respect for her own strength. In that moment, she understood that Jack was not just a hero in the stories people told. He was a man who valued life and courage in every form. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Jack and Clara walked together toward the outskirts of town. They did not speak much at first, but there was a silent understanding between them. Jack kept an eye on the town and the surrounding plains, aware that danger could return at any moment. Clara, feeling safer in his presence, began to speak about her life, the shop, her family, and the small joys of Red Creek. Jack listened attentively, occasionally sharing brief stories of his travels, the people he had met, and the challenges he had faced. Their conversation was easy, flowing naturally, a rare comfort in a world often filled with uncertainty. By late afternoon, Jack suggested that they move to a more secluded place for safety. He led Clara to a small cabin hidden among the hills outside Red Creek, a place few knew about. The cabin was simple but sturdy, built with rough wooden beams and a small stone fireplace. Inside, there were basic furnishings, a table, chairs, and a couple of beds, but it was warm and safe, a stark contrast to the danger that had lurked in the town earlier. Clara could feel the tension from the morning begin to ease. The cabin, with its quiet surroundings and gentle light, offered a sense of security she had not felt in hours. As they settled in, Clara spoke about her fear and confusion. She described how quickly the gang had appeared, how strong and unrelenting they had been, and how she had struggled to free herself. Jack listened carefully, nodding in understanding. "You handled yourself well," he said gently. "Most people wouldn't have had the strength to fight back, even for a moment. You have courage you might not even know about." Clara looked at him, a mix of gratitude and curiosity in her eyes. His words were comforting, but they also made her reflect on her own abilities. She realized that she had been stronger than she had believed, and that strength mattered as much as courage in facing life's dangers. The evening brought a quiet peace to the cabin. Jack built a small fire in the hearth, and they shared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and dried meat. The warmth of the fire, the calm of the hills, and the shared stories created a bond between them. Clara spoke of her dreams, her desire to explore the world beyond Red Creek, to see new places and to experience life fully. Jack listened, his eyes thoughtful. He had spent years wandering alone, carrying memories of past hardships and injustices, and he felt a quiet respect for Clara's dreams. In her words, he saw hope and determination, qualities that reminded him of why he had chosen to help her in the first place. Night fell over the hills, and the stars appeared in the wide western sky, twinkling like distant fires. Clara looked out the small window of the cabin, feeling a sense of calm she had not experienced before. The dangers of the day seemed far away, replaced by a quiet connection between her and Jack. She realized that she trusted him, not just for her safety, but because he had shown integrity, strength, and kindness. Jack, sitting across from her by the fire, felt a similar connection. He had met many people in his travels, but few had left an impression as strong as Clara. There was a sincerity in her eyes, a quiet determination that resonated with his own sense of justice and purpose. As the night deepened, they spoke in whispers, sharing memories of their pasts. Clara told Jack about her childhood, growing up in Red Creek, and the simple joys she had experienced. She spoke of her parents, her work in the shop, and the moments of quiet happiness that defined her life. Jack, in turn, revealed parts of his own story, the places he had traveled, the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned along the way. There was no need for grand declarations or dramatic words. Their conversation was honest, simple, and meaningful. It created a foundation of trust that would carry them through the challenges yet to come. Sleep eventually claimed them, but even in the quiet darkness, a sense of awareness lingered. Jack remained alert, listening to the sounds of the night, aware that the gang that had attacked Clara might still be near. Clara slept with a sense of safety she had not felt in hours, her dreams untroubled by fear. The cabin, nestled in the hills and shielded from prying eyes, became a sanctuary, a place where courage and trust began to grow alongside the bond between them. The next morning brought light and hope. Clara awoke first, looking out at the hills bathed in golden sunlight. She saw the vastness of the plains, the freedom of the open land, and a sense of possibility that filled her heart. Jack joined her moments later, carrying water for breakfast and a calm presence that reassured her. They shared a meal quietly, enjoying the simple pleasures of food and the warmth of companionship. Clara realized that despite the dangers of the previous day, life could still hold beauty, and that courage and trust could create a space for hope and new beginnings. As the day progressed, they began discussing the challenges ahead. Jack knew the gang would not have been defeated permanently. Their boldness suggested that they would return, perhaps with more numbers and greater determination. Clara, though cautious, showed a willingness to be part of the solution. She insisted that the town and its people deserved protection, and that they could not hide forever in fear. Jack agreed, recognizing her insight and courage. Together they began planning a strategy, not one based on recklessness, but on careful observation, clever tactics, and teamwork. Jack showed Clara how to assess the surroundings, to recognize potential threats, and to use the environment to their advantage. He taught her simple but effective techniques for staying safe, moving quietly, and observing without being seen. Clara absorbed these lessons quickly, demonstrating her own intelligence and adaptability. She realized that courage was not only about facing danger, but also about preparation, awareness, and the ability to act decisively when necessary. Jack recognized that she was not just someone he was protecting. She was a partner, capable of contributing to their shared goal of safety and justice. By late afternoon, they returned briefly to the outskirts of Red Creek, observing the town from a distance. The streets were quiet, but there was a subtle tension in the air. Jack and Clara exchanged thoughts and strategies, planning how to protect the town if the gang returned. They discussed hiding places, alert signals, and ways to alert the townsfolk without causing panic. Their teamwork grew naturally, each learning from the other and building a sense of trust that went beyond words. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of gold and orange, Clara and Jack returned to the cabin. They felt a sense of accomplishment, not because they had defeated the gang entirely, but because they had prepared, learned, and strengthened their bond. There was a quiet excitement in the air, a feeling that life, even in the Wild West, held moments of connection, bravery, and hope. That night, as the stars appeared again in the vast western sky, Clara reflected on the events of the past day. She realized that her life had changed in ways she could not fully understand yet. She had faced fear, experienced courage, and discovered a bond with a stranger who had become more than just a protector. He had become a companion, someone who saw her strength and respected it. Jack, lying awake near the fire, thought of Clara with a sense of admiration and care. He had wandered the plains for years, but rarely had he encountered someone whose courage, kindness, and intelligence matched his own values. Together, they had faced danger and begun a journey that would shape their lives in ways neither could yet imagine. The morning sun rose over the hills surrounding Red Creek, casting long shadows across the dusty plains. The town below was calm, almost peaceful, but Jack and Clara knew better. The gang that had attacked the town once would likely return, perhaps even bolder and more dangerous than before. The quiet streets hid the memory of yesterday's chaos, but both felt the tension lingering in the air. Clara stood near the cabin window, gazing at the distant town. Her mind raced with questions and plans. She knew that hiding forever was not an option. The townsfolk depended on courage and action to keep them safe. Jack stood behind her, his eyes scanning the horizon, noticing every movement in the distance. His calm demeanor reassured Clara, but she could sense the sharpness in his gaze, the focus of someone who had faced danger countless times and survived. Jack suggested they begin by observing the gang's patterns. "They will come back," he said softly, "and when they do, they won't make the same mistakes. We have to be ready. We need to know their moves before they know ours." Clara nodded, understanding the importance of vigilance. She had seen fear and danger yesterday, but she also saw the strength in preparation. Together, they devised a plan to monitor the outskirts of the town, using the hills as vantage points. They would watch the roads, the nearby plains, and any hidden paths the gang might take. Clara learned quickly how to use the binoculars Jack had brought, scanning for movement, listening to distant sounds, and noting anything unusual. The day passed slowly, filled with quiet observation and careful discussion. Clara asked Jack questions about his past adventures and the places he had traveled. He spoke of deserts, rivers, small towns, and hidden trails, always emphasizing the lessons he had learned rather than the dangers he had faced. His words were calm, measured, and full of wisdom, and Clara absorbed each story, not just for entertainment, but as a guide for courage and survival. In turn, she shared her experiences growing up in Red Creek, her hopes for the town, and her belief that life could be good even in difficult times. Their conversation flowed easily, blending the practical with the personal, building a deeper understanding between them. By late afternoon, Jack decided it was time to test their readiness. They practiced moving quietly through the hills, using natural cover to remain unseen. Clara proved herself quick to learn, moving with careful steps, crouching behind rocks, and observing the surroundings with sharp eyes. Jack noticed her adaptability and resilience, recognizing that she was more than just someone who needed protection. She was becoming a true partner. Together, they rehearsed alert signals, the ways to warn each other without drawing attention, and how to react quickly if the gang appeared. Each exercise strengthened their confidence and built a silent bond that words alone could not create. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Jack suggested they return to the cabin. The warm light of the evening bathed the hills in gold, and the quiet breeze carried the scents of grass and distant wildflowers. Inside the cabin, they shared a simple meal and discussed what they had learned. Clara spoke of her fear but also her determination to face whatever came next. "I don't want to be scared anymore," she said quietly. "I want to be ready so we can protect the town and ourselves." Jack smiled, impressed by her courage. "You already are," he said. "Courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about acting even when you are." Night fell and the stars appeared above the hills like scattered diamonds. The quiet was peaceful, yet both knew it was only temporary. Jack stayed awake longer, listening for any signs of danger. Clara, though more rested than the previous night, still felt a sense of anticipation. The cabin, while safe for now, could not protect them forever. The gang's return seemed inevitable, and preparation was their best defense. They spoke softly about the strategy they would use, planning every step carefully, from the vantage points to the timing of their movements. The next day brought a new sense of determination. Jack and Clara left the cabin before dawn, carrying minimal supplies and moving quietly through the hills. Their goal was to scout the area and set traps, not to fight recklessly, but to use intelligence and strategy to gain the upper hand. Clara's confidence grew with each step. She had learned to observe, to anticipate, and to act decisively. Jack noticed her transformation, seeing in her not just a survivor but a capable partner who could face challenges with courage and thoughtfulness. As they moved, they spotted signs of the gang, footprints in the dirt, broken branches along the trail, and remnants of a fire used for cooking. The evidence suggested that the gang had been nearby, perhaps preparing to return to Red Creek. Jack and Clara noted everything carefully, marking the paths and estimating the number of members. Clara asked questions, seeking to understand how the gang operated, and Jack explained their likely behavior based on past experience. Each piece of information brought clarity and a sense of control, reducing the fear and replacing it with purpose. By late morning, they reached a vantage point overlooking a narrow pass leading into Red Creek. Jack explained how they could use the terrain to their advantage. "If they try to come through here, we'll see them first," he said. The pass is narrow and we can control it. They won't know what's coming." Clara listened intently, imagining how they could use their knowledge to protect the town. She felt a surge of pride and responsibility, realizing that she was part of the solution, not just a bystander in the story of danger and courage. The day passed with careful observation, occasional rest, and quiet conversation. Jack shared more stories of the Wild West, tales of other towns and other people he had helped or encountered. Clara listened, fascinated not just by the adventures, but by the lessons hidden in each story. The importance of honesty, courage, preparation, and respect for others. In turn, she shared more about her life in Red Creek, about the townsfolk and the simple joys that made the town worth protecting. Their bond grew stronger, rooted not only in necessity but in understanding, respect, and shared values. As afternoon turned to evening, they noticed distant movement in the valley below. Shadows shifted, and faint voices carried on the wind. Jack and Clara watched carefully, recognizing the approach of the gang. The men were fewer than they had feared, perhaps scouting the town before returning with full force. Jack signaled to Clara, and they both moved to better positions, hidden behind rocks and brush, observing silently. The gang members did not notice them, unaware that their actions were being watched and anticipated. Clara's heart raced, but she remained calm, trusting Jack's guidance and her own instincts. The night brought more tension. Jack and Clara returned to the cabin briefly, gathering supplies and preparing for the possible confrontation. They discussed the strategy, how to protect the town, how to signal the townsfolk if needed, and how to use the terrain to their advantage. Clara's confidence grew as she realized that courage was not just about action in the moment, but also about careful planning and thoughtfulness. She understood that the coming days would test them, but she was ready to face whatever challenges arose, alongside Jack. The next morning, the tension became action. The gang returned, moving cautiously toward Red Creek. Jack and Clara, positioned in the hills with a clear view of the approach, observed their movements and prepared to act. Clara's training with Jack had paid off. She knew when to stay hidden, when to signal, and when to react. Together, they devised a plan to protect the town without unnecessary risk, using clever traps and controlled confrontation to deter the attackers. Clara felt a surge of confidence and courage, understanding that she was no longer a passive observer but an active participant in ensuring safety and justice. As the gang drew closer, Jack and Clara moved swiftly yet silently. They positioned themselves strategically, ready to intercept the attackers and protect the townsfolk. The tension in the air was palpable, but Clara's heart remained steady. She had learned from Jack's experience, from her own courage, and from the quiet observation of the environment. Every step they took, every movement was deliberate and calculated. They were ready. The first confrontation occurred in the narrow pass, where the terrain gave them a clear advantage. Jack and Clara remained hidden, observing the gang's approach. When the first group stepped into the trap, Clara signaled, and Jack acted swiftly. The gang, caught off guard, hesitated. Their confidence wavered as they realized they had underestimated the defenders of Red Creek. Clara, standing behind Jack, felt a mixture of adrenaline and calm focus. She had learned to act decisively, to trust her instincts, and to rely on the partnership she had developed with Jack. The confrontation, though tense, was brief. The gang, realizing they were at a disadvantage, retreated cautiously, wary of further traps and prepared defenders. Jack and Clara pursued only briefly, ensuring that the attackers would not regroup and return immediately. The town was safe for now, thanks to their careful planning, courage, and teamwork. Clara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced danger directly, learned to act with courage and intelligence, and had protected her town alongside a man she respected and trusted. As the sun set over the hills, Jack and Clara returned to the cabin, exhausted but satisfied. The threat had been managed, the town was safe, and their bond had strengthened through shared experience. Clara reflected on the events of the day, realizing that courage was not just about fighting, but about preparation, observation, and partnership. Jack, too, felt a quiet satisfaction, recognizing Clara's growth and resilience. Together, they had faced danger and emerged stronger, ready for whatever challenges the Wild West might bring next. The morning air in the hills surrounding Red Creek was crisp, carrying the faint scent of earth and wild grass. Jack and Clara had spent the previous night planning carefully, knowing that the gang might return in larger numbers. Both were awake before sunrise, moving quietly around the cabin. Jack checked their supplies, making sure they had enough food, water, and equipment for the day. Clara packed a small bag with essentials, including water, a few tools, and a first aid kit. Each knew that today could be dangerous, but they were determined to face the challenge together. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting long shadows across the hills and illuminating the town below. From their vantage point, they could see the rooftops of Red Creek, the wooden sidewalks, and the small figures moving about the streets. The town seemed peaceful, almost ordinary, but both Jack and Clara knew better. The gang had shown determination and boldness, and it was likely they would attempt a more coordinated attack this time. Their plan relied not on brute force, but on intelligence, strategy, and teamwork. Every step they took, every move they made, had to be precise. Jack led Clara through the hills, moving quietly along natural paths that offered cover and concealment. They approached a narrow canyon that led to the outskirts of town, an ideal location to set traps and intercept the gang if they advanced. Jack pointed to several points along the path, explaining how they could use the rocks, trees, and natural terrain to their advantage. Clara listened intently, absorbing every detail. She had learned much in the past days, how to move quietly, how to observe carefully, and how to anticipate danger. Now, all her training and courage would be tested. By mid-morning, they were in position. The canyon provided a clear view of the road leading into Red Creek, and the natural curves allowed them to remain hidden from view. Jack had prepared simple but effective traps, small pits disguised with branches and leaves, loose rocks that could be used to create noise or distraction, and signals to communicate silently with Clara. Clara understood the plan clearly and felt a mix of excitement and tension. She knew the gang would be dangerous, but she also trusted her own abilities and Jack's guidance. Together, they waited patiently, alert and ready. Hours passed in quiet anticipation. The sun climbed higher, casting heat over the hills and making the air shimmer with distance. Clara's eyes scanned the landscape continuously, looking for any movement. Jack remained calm, whispering advice and reminders to stay focused. The silence was intense, broken only by the distant sounds of birds and the occasional rustle of the wind. Each second felt stretched, every shadow or movement potentially signaling the arrival of danger. Clara felt her heartbeat quicken, but she also felt a sense of readiness she had never experienced before. She was no longer just a girl from Red Creek. She was a partner, a defender, and someone who could act decisively under pressure. Late in the afternoon, a distant cloud of dust appeared on the road leading into Red Creek. Clara signaled to Jack, and they both observed carefully. The gang was approaching, moving cautiously but with clear intent. Jack and Clara took their positions, remaining hidden but ready to act. Clara felt a mixture of fear and determination. She knew the importance of the moment. This was the day they would confront the gang directly, protect their town, and prove the strength of their courage and teamwork. As the gang entered the narrow canyon, Jack gave a subtle signal. Clara quickly moved to her designated position, ready to assist. The first traps were triggered. A pit concealed by branches caught one of the gang members by surprise, causing him to stumble and fall. Others stepped on loose rocks, creating noise and drawing their attention to the wrong side of the canyon. The gang was momentarily confused, unsure of what had caused the sudden disturbances. Jack and Clara used this advantage to control the engagement, positioning themselves to observe every movement while remaining hidden. The gang quickly realized that they had underestimated the defenders of Red Creek. Their confidence faltered as they encountered obstacles and traps at every turn. Jack acted with precision, using his skills and knowledge of the terrain to anticipate their moves and block their path. Clara, following his guidance, assisted by signaling, creating distractions, and remaining ready to intervene if needed. Her courage and quick thinking proved invaluable, as she was able to predict some of the gang's attempts and prevent them from advancing further. The confrontation escalated when a group of gang members tried to flank the defenders, hoping to bypass the traps. Jack and Clara anticipated this move. They had positioned themselves carefully to cover both sides of the canyon, ensuring that no one could sneak past unnoticed. Clara felt her heart pounding, but she stayed calm, remembering Jack's training and the observations they had made over the past days. Together, they used the terrain and their strategic preparation to control the movement of the attackers, forcing them back and limiting their options. During the encounter, Clara's courage and intelligence shone brightly. She took decisive action to prevent a gang member from reaching Jack, using a rock to create a noise that distracted the man long enough for Jack to intervene safely. Her actions were quick, calculated, and effective. Jack noticed her bravery and skill, feeling both pride and admiration. He realized that Clara was no longer someone he needed to protect. She was a true partner, capable of facing danger with clarity and courage. The gang, frustrated by their inability to advance and increasingly aware of the traps, began to retreat. Jack and Clara allowed them to withdraw, ensuring that the attackers would not regroup immediately. The confrontation had been challenging, but their preparation, teamwork, and courage had ensured the safety of Red Creek. Clara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced real danger, acted decisively, and contributed meaningfully to the protection of the town. Jack felt a quiet satisfaction, recognizing Clara's growth and resilience. Together, they had proven that courage, strategy, and partnership were stronger than brute force. After the confrontation, they returned to the cabin to rest and recover. Clara cleaned minor scrapes and bruises, while Jack tended to small injuries as well. They shared a quiet meal, reflecting on the day's events. Clara spoke about her fear, her determination, and the sense of empowerment she had felt. Jack encouraged her, reinforcing that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Their conversation strengthened the bond between them, rooted in respect, trust, and shared experience. The following day, Red Creek's townsfolk expressed gratitude for the actions of Jack and Clara. Though the confrontation had been largely unseen by the town, the results were evident. The gang had been deterred and the streets remained safe. Clara realized that courage could inspire others even in subtle ways. Jack, too, recognized that their actions had created a ripple of reassurance and hope throughout the town. The sense of community and protection was strengthened, and both felt proud of the role they had played. In the days that followed, Jack and Clara continued to observe the area, ensuring that no remnants of the gang remained nearby. They maintained vigilance while also allowing themselves moments of rest and reflection. Clara began to understand the balance between caution and life, fear and courage. Jack shared more of his knowledge about the Wild West, about the importance of preparation, respect, and moral courage. Clara absorbed these lessons eagerly, feeling herself grow stronger and more confident with each passing day. During this time, their relationship deepened. Clara admired Jack's wisdom, patience, and calm courage. Jack admired Clara's intelligence, quick thinking, and bravery. They shared quiet conversations, stories of their pasts and hopes for the future. The bond between them was no longer just about survival. It had grown into trust, respect, and the beginnings of affection. The experiences they had faced together had created a connection that neither could ignore, a silent understanding that went beyond words. One evening, as the sun set over the hills and painted the sky in shades of gold and red, Jack and Clara sat near the cabin, enjoying the calm after the storm. Clara reflected on how much she had grown, how she had learned to face fear, act decisively, and trust both herself and Jack. Jack, in turn, thought about the journey they had shared, the dangers they had faced, and the courage Clara had displayed. He realized that their partnership had transformed both of them, creating a sense of purpose and connection that would carry them forward. The night was quiet, filled with the sounds of crickets and distant winds. Jack and Clara planned for the future, discussing how to ensure the town's safety and how to continue protecting one another. Their conversation was calm and focused, filled with practical considerations and shared determination. They understood that danger could return, but they also knew that together they were stronger than any threat. Their courage, preparation, and trust in each other had proven that even the Wild West, with its unpredictable dangers, could be met with intelligence, strategy, and bravery. As they settled into the cabin for the night, both felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. The confrontation with the gang had been challenging, but it had also revealed their true strength. Clara had discovered courage she did not know she possessed, and Jack had found a companion whose intelligence, bravery, and loyalty matched his own. Together they had faced danger, protected the town, and grown closer through shared experience. The hills around Red Creek were quiet, but within the cabin there was a sense of readiness, connection, and a shared commitment to face whatever challenges the future might hold. The morning sun rose over Red Creek, casting a golden light across the wooden buildings and dusty streets. The town seemed peaceful again, almost as if nothing had happened. But the townsfolk knew better. News of the previous day's confrontation had spread quietly, carried by whispers and cautious glances. Jack and Clara's courage had ensured the safety of Red Creek, but the memory of danger lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed or heard about it. Despite this, there was a sense of relief and pride among the people. Life, though unpredictable, had been protected by two extraordinary individuals who had shown bravery, intelligence, and heart. Jack and Clara rose early, both feeling the calm after days of tension. The hills around the town were quiet, filled with the soft sounds of morning, birds singing, horses neighing in the distance, and the gentle rustle of wind through the grass. Clara stretched her arms and looked out over the valley, reflecting on how far she had come. She remembered the fear she had felt when the gang first attacked, the terror of being dragged, and the sense of helplessness that had filled her heart. And yet, here she was, standing beside the man who had saved her life and become her trusted companion. She had grown stronger, braver, and wiser through the experiences of the past days. Jack moved around the cabin, checking their supplies and preparing for the day. He had been a wanderer for years, accustomed to danger, uncertainty, and solitude. Yet in Clara's presence, he felt something different, a sense of home, a feeling that he had found someone who understood him and could stand by his side through anything. He glanced at Clara as she worked, noticing the determination and intelligence in her eyes. He knew that their bond had grown through shared challenges, trust, and mutual respect. It was a connection that went beyond friendship, hinting at something deeper, something neither had expected but both quietly welcomed. After breakfast, they decided to return briefly to Red Creek. The town seemed calm, the streets alive with the usual bustle, children running and laughing, shopkeepers arranging their goods, and townsfolk greeting one another with friendly nods. Yet Jack and Clara moved with awareness, ready to intervene if any sign of danger appeared. Their presence, while subtle, was reassuring to the townsfolk. Some recognized Jack from the alleyway rescue, while others had heard stories of the clever strategies he and Clara had used to deter the gang. Either way, the town felt safer knowing that these two were watching over them. As they walked through the main street, townsfolk began to approach. Some brought small gifts of gratitude, a basket of fresh bread, a few coins, or even a warm handshake. Clara smiled and accepted their thanks humbly, feeling proud but also grateful for the support of her community. Jack nodded politely, his quiet demeanor showing respect for the people he had helped protect. The interaction strengthened Clara's belief in the importance of community, courage, and mutual care. She realized that their actions were not just about survival, but about ensuring the safety, trust, and well-being of everyone in the town. The calm of the morning was soon accompanied by planning for the future. Jack and Clara discussed ways to reinforce the town's safety, using knowledge of the surrounding terrain, simple traps, and alert systems to protect against future threats. Clara contributed ideas, thinking carefully about the layout of Red Creek and how townsfolk could help without putting themselves in danger. Jack encouraged her insights, recognizing her growing confidence, intelligence, and ability to think strategically. Their planning was a blend of practicality and courage, a reflection of how far they had come together in such a short time. By midday, the town was fully awake, busy with the rhythm of daily life. Children played near the town square, shopkeepers greeted customers, and horses were led along the streets. Jack and Clara paused for a moment to observe, appreciating the peace that they had helped secure. Clara felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that their courage and teamwork had made a real difference. Jack, too, felt a quiet pride, but he was more focused on Clara and the journey they had shared. He realized that their partnership had transformed him, giving him a sense of belonging and purpose he had not felt in years of wandering alone. The afternoon brought a visit from the town's elders. They expressed deep gratitude for Jack and Clara's efforts and offered a simple but meaningful gift, a handcrafted plaque to honor their bravery and service. Clara accepted it humbly, feeling touched by the acknowledgement of her courage and contribution. Jack, true to his nature, accepted the gesture quietly, appreciating the respect but not seeking recognition. The townsfolk gathered briefly, expressing thanks and admiration for the two who had saved Red Creek from danger. The moment was quiet yet powerful, a testament to the impact that courage, intelligence, and teamwork could have in even the smallest of towns. As the day passed, Jack and Clara found themselves alone for a walk along the outskirts of the town. The hills stretched endlessly, filled with the warm glow of the setting sun. Clara spoke softly about her experiences, how the fear and tension of the past days had transformed into confidence and determination. Jack listened, appreciating her insight and sharing reflections from his own life. He spoke about the loneliness of wandering, the lessons he had learned, and the value of finding someone to trust and rely upon. Clara felt a warmth in her chest, realizing that their connection was no longer just about survival, but about understanding, respect, and mutual care. The evening brought a quiet calm. Jack and Clara returned to the cabin, where a fire had been prepared for warmth. The soft glow of the flames filled the room, creating a cozy and peaceful atmosphere. They shared a simple meal, speaking softly about the town, their plans for the future, and the lessons learned from their experiences. Clara felt a sense of gratitude, not only for her own survival but for the companionship, courage, and guidance Jack had provided. Jack, in turn, felt a quiet happiness, realizing that he had found someone whose courage, intelligence, and kindness matched his own values. As night fell, the stars appeared above the hills, twinkling like scattered diamonds across the sky. Clara and Jack sat outside, enjoying the gentle breeze and the quiet of the Wild West night. Clara reflected on how far she had come, from fear and helplessness to courage and partnership. She understood that bravery was not about facing danger alone, but about acting wisely, preparing carefully, and trusting in others when necessary. Jack looked at her with admiration, seeing the growth and strength she had developed through their shared experiences. Their bond, forged in the fires of danger and strengthened through mutual trust, had become unbreakable. The following days were filled with moments of peace, community, and preparation. Jack and Clara continued to help the town, reinforcing safety measures, teaching observation and caution to willing townsfolk, and ensuring that Red Creek remained protected. Clara's confidence and courage inspired others, and Jack's quiet strength reassured the community. Together, they had transformed not only their own lives but also the lives of those around them. Red Creek became more than just a town. It became a place of shared responsibility, trust, and courage. As the weeks passed, Jack and Clara's bond deepened beyond friendship. They shared quiet moments together, watching the sunset from the hills, walking through the town, or simply sitting by the cabin fire. There was a sense of ease, understanding, and affection in their interactions. Clara admired Jack's calm wisdom, strength, and unwavering courage. Jack admired Clara's intelligence, bravery, and resilience. Each found comfort and joy in the presence of the other, realizing that their connection had grown into something meaningful, profound, and rare. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jack and Clara stood together on a hill overlooking Red Creek. Clara spoke softly about her hopes for the town, her dreams for the future, and the joy she felt in seeing life continue peacefully. Jack listened, feeling a deep sense of contentment. He realized that he no longer needed to wander aimlessly. He had found purpose, belonging, and perhaps even love. Clara's presence had changed him, giving him a reason to stay, to protect, and to build a life beyond the solitude of the plains. The night settled over Red Creek with a calm and quiet peace. The town slept under the protective watch of Jack and Clara, who remained vigilant yet serene. They had faced danger, acted with courage and intelligence, and ensured the safety of the town and its people. But beyond that, they had discovered something even more valuable, a partnership built on trust, respect, and mutual admiration. Their experiences had transformed them both, preparing them for whatever challenges the future might hold. In the days that followed, life returned to its natural rhythm. The townsfolk went about their daily routines. Children played in the streets, shopkeepers greeted customers, and the quiet streets of Red Creek once again reflected the calm and order of small-town life. Jack and Clara continued to watch over the town, not as outsiders but as members of the community. Their presence brought reassurance and safety, and their bond became a symbol of courage, partnership, and hope. One afternoon, as the sun shone brightly over the town, Jack and Clara took a quiet ride together along the outskirts of Red Creek. Horses trotted along the dusty paths, carrying them across the plains. The wind brushed against their faces, carrying the scents of grass, earth, and wildflowers. Clara felt a sense of freedom and joy, realizing that despite the dangers they had faced, life could be beautiful, full of possibilities, and filled with moments worth cherishing. Jack glanced at her, noticing the smile on her face, and felt a sense of happiness he had not known in years of wandering. Their journey had begun with fear, danger, and uncertainty. It had tested their courage, intelligence, and resilience. But through it all, they had grown stronger, braver, and closer. Red Creek had witnessed the courage of two remarkable individuals, and the town's safety and peace had been restored. Clara and Jack had not only faced danger but had built a bond that would last beyond the trials of the Wild West. As the sun set, painting the sky in vibrant colors, Jack and Clara rode side by side, their hearts light with hope and a sense of belonging. They had faced fear, embraced courage, and discovered the power of trust, partnership, and love. The hills of Red Creek, the dusty streets, and the wide western plains had become a backdrop for a story of bravery, connection, and the beginnings of a new chapter in their lives. Together, they rode toward the future, ready for whatever adventures awaited them, and certain that they would face them side by side.